By this point, you probably know what to expect out of a Far Cry game. After all, the series formula hasn't changed all that much since Far Cry 3 was released almost a decade ago. It's a safe bet that you're going to be dropped into a giant map, tasked with taking down an interesting villain who usually overshadows the often pretty cookie-cutter protagonist, and given an absurd arsenal of weapons and vehicles to clear out enemy-infested bases and complete an ever-escalating series of over-the-top missions as you attempt to grapple back control of the country/state from the aforementioned villain. And aside from some nice quality of life improvements, Far Cry 6 really doesn't do much to shake up this formula, but there's still something undeniably satisfying about clearing out the map of a Far Cry game. Stick with me on this, because it's going to sound a lot more negative than I mean it to. Far Cry 6 is the junk food of video games. It provides little more than empty calories, and it's packed with the same ideas the series has been churning for the past decade. But sometimes junk food is comforting. Sometimes it's exactly what you want, and it really hits the spot. And that's exactly how I feel about the Far Cry series. While the series may be lacking in innovation, I always end up having a lot of fun with the Far Cry games. Well, with the exception of New Dawn. In Far Cry 6, you play as Danny Rojas, and like the last couple of Far Cry games, you can choose if you want to be a male or female version of the character. Danny is a citizen of Yara, a fictional Caribbean island that clearly takes more than a little inspiration from Cuba. Yara is run by a ruthless dictator named Anton Castile, and because of this, Danny initially wants nothing more than to escape Yara. But after witnessing the brutality and cruelty of Castile firsthand, Danny realises that she's going to need to take a stand and fight back by teaming up with the guerrilla fighters who are trying to reclaim Yara. Danny knows that if she's going to free Yara from the clutches of Castile, she'll need a lot of help, so she immediately gets to work recruiting other guerrilla factions and freedom fighters from across Yara. Danny is a badass. She's brave, witty, and all around likeable. She's the best Far Cry protagonist by a country mile. Unlike prior Far Cry games, which were first person 100% of the time, Far Cry 6 switches to third person during cutscenes and when you're wandering around home bases. I loved this change. Actually seeing Danny in cutscenes makes her feel like a real character, and not just a faceless avatar like many of the prior Far Cry protagonists. It also gives you an opportunity to get a glimpse at all the gear you've equipped Danny with, which is nice, even if she usually looked absurd and mismatched because I just slapped on whatever gear had perks I liked. Since Far Cry 3, the series has become known for its compelling villains. Obviously Ubisoft are well aware of this, and with Far Cry 6 they've raised the bar higher than ever before by casting Giancarlo Esposito of Breaking Bad and The Mandalorian fame as the despicable Anton Castile, a ruthless and violent dictator who rules the island of Yara with an iron fist. Let's be honest, going into this, you probably expected Giancarlo Esposito would be the best part of the story, and he definitely is. He turns in an absolutely killer performance. Castile's menacing yet calm demeanour makes him genuinely scary, even if his characterisation does occasionally slip into just being cartoonishly evil. Esposito definitely sets an extremely high bar, with nearly every other performance paling in comparison. But him stealing the show here will come as no surprise if you've seen him as Gus Fring in Breaking Bad. His chilling performance made Gus one of the greatest villains of all time. But hey, Breaking Bad is my favourite show, so maybe I'm a little biased. Castile also has a son named Diego, who he's grooming to take his place when he's gone. You can immediately tell that Diego isn't comfortable with his father's actions. He seemingly has a good heart and doesn't necessarily want to follow in his father's footsteps. Diego's relationship with his father, as well as the one he starts to form with Danny, add an interesting dynamic to the story that make it more engaging than your average Far Cry game. With that said, outside of these few characters, the story is very paint-by-numbers Far Cry. It retreads a lot of well-worn territory, and it's packed with the same archetypical characters and story beats that you see in every Far Cry game, so don't expect too many interesting surprises along the way. Though to give credit where it's due, I was actually pretty caught off guard by the ending of the game, and it did leave more of an impression than I would have ever expected. Far Cry 6's gameplay offers all the unrelenting action you'd expect out of a Far Cry game. I'd even say that its absurd arsenal of weapons and vehicles make it the most over-the-top Far Cry game yet, and that's really saying something. I've always thought the gunplay in Far Cry felt good, and it's better than ever in 6. I played Far Cry 6 on PS5 and was impressed by just how much the adaptive triggers of the DualSense added to the gunplay, which isn't too shocking because shooters are where the adaptive triggers have really shined for me so far. In Far Cry 6, it's clear that a lot of attention went into making different weapons feel distinct. You definitely won't mistake the strong kick of a shotgun with the violent pulsation of a light machine gun. Of course, this is a Far Cry game, so you're not just using the normal weapons that you see in every other shooter. Ubisoft went so ridiculous with the lineup of weapons in Far Cry 6, and I truly appreciate it. There's firework launching guns, electricity guns, a gun that can deploy a shield in front of you, there's even a CD launcher that blares the Macarena, and that's not even mentioning the Supremos. Supremos are gadgets that Dani wears on her back, and there's a whole host of different Supremos for different situations. You start with a missile launching backpack, but you can also equip an EMP Supremo that can instantly disable all alarms in an area, a Supremo that automatically revives you if you're downed, or a Supremo that launches a ring of fire around you to obliterate any enemies in your vicinity. And that's not even all of them. No matter how many Supremos I got though, I was always drawn back to the missile launcher. It's just so absurdly overpowered, and it's so satisfying to use it to blow enemy helicopters to pieces the second they show up. Like in Far Cry New Dawn, enemies have health bars, and I'm not going to lie, I was very worried when I saw this. When shooters start introducing RPG mechanics, enemies often end up feeling like bullet sponges, which can make shootouts feel entirely unsatisfying. This was a huge problem I had with Far Cry New Dawn and Wolfenstein Youngblood. Fortunately, this isn't the case in Far Cry 6. Enemies feel like they take an appropriate amount of damage, and a headshot is still going to take out pretty much any normal enemy you come across. Further leaning into the RPG-inspired mechanics, Dani herself earns XP and levels up as you play, and areas have a recommended level for Dani to be at before you try tackling them. During certain points of the story, the military presence in Yara will increase, which raises the recommended level for all the different regions of the map. This means that the game scales with you, so you're not just mindlessly running through early areas later on, as the enemies there will also be getting stronger along with Dani. Throughout your journey, you'll find all sorts of different gear to equip Dani with, each piece of which offers a different kind of buff, and there's a great amount of variety in the gear, so you're able to tailor Dani's outfit to best suit your playstyle. There's things like shorts that provide a speed boost after sliding, shirts that reduce damage taken by explosions, and even shoes that prevent mines you step on from detonating. Each piece of gear is also part of a set, and by equipping the full set, you'll get further perks. Dani's got a lot of different equipment that allows Far Cry 6 to offer more mobility than any of the prior Far Cry games. This allows you to navigate the environments in a lot of fun ways. She's got a grappling hook to scale walls, a wingsuit so you can glide from one point of the map to another at breakneck speeds, and a parachute that allows you to drop into areas from above, letting you get the jump on enemies before they could ever even know you're there. You can even airdrop from bases you've already captured, which quickly became my go-to way of getting around the map. Far Cry 6 also has some really great quality of life features. For instance, something I love is that you can access your entire arsenal at all times. You just go into the menu to swap out your weapons and equipment, meaning you don't need to be at a base or shop to switch up your loadout. Dani will also auto-loot enemies and animal carcasses, so you're not forced to hover over them holding down square. You can also just have your vehicle delivered to you at any point, and you can even refill your ammo at your car's trunk. These kinds of features mean that you're never forced to slow down or deal with tedious busy work. Is it ridiculous that Dani is seemingly carrying hundreds of weapons at any given time? Yes, but so is everything in Far Cry. I love that Far Cry 6 prioritises fun over any sense of realism. One of my favourite aspects of Far Cry 5 was the Fangs for Hire system that allowed you to roll into battle with a host of different animal companions. This concept makes its return in Far Cry 6 with the Amigo System. Far Cry 6 completely ditches the idea of boring human companions altogether, instead offering you 5 animal amigos to choose from, including Guapo, an alligator who can tear enemies to shreds, Chicaron, a crazy aggressive rooster who wants nothing more than to hunt down Castile's army, and Chorizo, an adorable wiener dog in a wheelchair who can distract enemies. And if you played Far Cry 5, you might even find a familiar face among the amigos. Far Cry 6's Yara is huge. While it's certainly not as overwhelming as the maps found in games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla or The Witcher 3, it's still a sizable map that offers a lot to see and do. There's also plenty of wild animals scattered across the map to create additional chaos, though I feel like there's definitely less of them this time around, as it didn't seem like I was being bombarded with animal attacks every 5 seconds like I was in some prior Far Cry games, which is certainly a much appreciated change. Occasionally as you're exploring the map, you'll even find some turncoats working for Castile, who'll sell you information on his operations for a bribe. Yara is filled with all the normal activities you'd expect to see in a Far Cry game, along with a few new ones. There's bases and checkpoints to take over, all sorts of races to win, side missions to complete, and there's even some smaller distractions like gambling over a game of dominoes to kill time. My personal favourite of the side activities was the treasure hunts. They usually consist of some fun platforming challenges and light environmental puzzle solving to get your hands on a reward like a new weapon. But some of these treasure hunts get truly ridiculous, and these are usually the best ones. One of the most unique and interesting treasure hunts saw me following a pelican across the map, forcing me to alternate between quad bikes, jet skis, and my wingsuit to keep up with him. I find that the quality of side missions in most open world games fluctuates wildly from mission to mission, and Far Cry 6's side missions, which are known as Yaran stories, are no different. Sometimes you'll be helping a bloodthirsty rooster on his quest for revenge, or filming a moronic influencer as he performs dangerous stunts like running through a live tank firing range for views, while other times you're just smashing 49 rooster eggs for some reason. After you've finished the game, you'll unlock some additional weekly challenges, including a new base to clear out each week. The downside to this is that there's no option to reset bases, which you could do in some prior Far Cry games. I have no idea why they removed this feature, and be forewarned that if you're a trophy or achievement hunter, you'll want to knock out any base related trophies along the way, because if you don't, you could end up stuck waiting for a new one to open up in a week. A huge oversight in Far Cry 6 is that there are missions that are only available at certain times of day, but there's no way to advance time in the game. So if it's currently daytime and the next mission you need to complete can only be accessed at night, you'll literally need to just wander around to kill time. While I love the satisfaction you get from clearing out a map, I'd be lying if I said I didn't find the offering of side activities very samey. While I enjoyed most of the time I spent clearing out the map on my quest for the platinum, I definitely did hit a point during the last handful of hours I spent with Far Cry 6 where I was well and truly ready to be done with it. In Far Cry 6, your home bases play a more important role than they ever have before. Not only can you buy all kinds of useful items at them, but you can bring materials you gather back to them to upgrade their facilities, and doing so improves the kind of services and items that they can offer you. From your home bases, you can also send out allies that you've recruited on missions to gather more resources for you, which drastically cuts down on the amount of grinding for resources that you need to do yourself. Special operations are an online-only mission type that you can jump into from home bases. While special operations require you to be online to play them, they can still be played solo like the rest of Far Cry 6. These missions send you to unique locations where you'll be tasked with extracting a device. The catch is that this device can't go above a certain temperature or you'll fail the mission. So once you have it, you'll need to stick to shaded paths and dart between different water sources that you can use to cool the device down. Special operations also strip you of your map, so you'll need to use the signs that are scattered around their locations to figure out where you are and how to get to your destination. The best part of the special operations are the maps they take place on. They're often unlike any other location in the main map of Yara, and there's a lot of creativity in their design. My favourite of these maps was the first one, which sees you dropped into a dinosaur-themed theme park. It's so different to anything else in the game, and I had a great time scouring every corner of it. Unfortunately, the actual missions don't match the level of thought and creativity that was put into the design of the environments. The level design itself is pretty dull, and constantly having to manage the heat of the device you're collecting is tedious, which makes the special operations grow repetitive incredibly fast. It's hard to imagine these missions being anything more than an afterthought that was simply thrown in to further extend your playtime. While Far Cry 6 is a good looking game, there are a few nagging issues that make it abundantly clear that this is a cross-gen title. While the models for all the major characters look great, largely thanks to Far Cry 6's impressive facial animation, and the weapons and vehicles are nicely detailed, there are still a lot of noticeably flat textures scattered around the environment. You'll also see a lot of repeated enemy models, often during a single firefight. Sometimes you'll literally be fighting 2 or 3 of the exact same enemy at once, which is a little jarring, and it definitely pulls you out of the experience. I also noticed that Far Cry 6's load times are longer than many other recent games. Maybe it's because it's a cross-gen title, and I've just grown impatient after being spoiled by games that are built from the ground up to utilise the new console's SSDs, but I felt like I was spending a lot of time staring at loading screens here. This became a far more glaring issue towards the end of my playthrough when I was constantly fast travelling around the map to check off the remaining side activities. While Far Cry 6 is by no means a huge leap forward for the franchise, it provides some much appreciated quality of life changes and the series' most reprehensible villain yet. And what the Far Cry series lacks in innovation, it does make up for in sheer ridiculousness and pure dumb fun. Do I wish I could have walked away from this game feeling like the series did something truly fresh and exciting? Absolutely. But that still didn't stop me from devouring this game. I couldn't put it down until I had the platinum, because when it comes down to it, the Far Cry games provide a sense of catharsis that no other series can match. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. You can also find countless other reviews on my channel, including my recent reviews of Kena Bridge of Spirits, Deathloop, and Life is Strange True Colors, and be sure to stay tuned for my upcoming reviews of Demon Slayer: The Hinokami Chronicles and Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy.